Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I am your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Tim and Tom Black. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good to be here with you.
Tim and Tom are brothers, are co-founders of Napali Capital. Tom is a physician, author, 13-year veteran. Thank you for your service. Tim has 30 years of upper-level management experience. His expertise is in operations, strategic planning, marketing, sales, and real estate development. And guys, why don't you all tell us a little bit about how you got into the real estate business and how you all work together as a team, what you do?
Sure. Great. Thank you for that brief introduction. As you noticed, Tim is not a veteran, so I just want to point that out real quick.
Thank you, Tom.
No problem.
Tom's an overachiever. He was
right.
branches.
I'm not sure where I got that from then.
Yep. 3 out of the 4. I wish I could have done 4th, but I couldn't.
Yes.
All right. So how did I get involved? So this goes back fairly, probably about a decade or so. I came out of medical school in 2006 and went to residency in the Midwest. And around that time, the housing market had not fared so well. As I finishing my postdoc and training in emergency medicine, the house that I had bought 3 years prior wasn't exactly worth what it was. So I rented it to a resident that was incoming for another 3 years at a one-time lease. And so that's really where I started to get the bug for real estate, looking at the tax advantages, especially knowing that down the road my income was going to change pretty significantly from being a resident, that I was going to need some depreciation and things maybe to offset to reduce my tax basis. So then moved to Texas, rented that house out, and started buying up houses down in the Houston market, foreclosures, FHA, things like that, just sight unseen houses and using them as rentals. So I think by the time I'd purchased about 7 of them and was doing somewhat of the leasing myself, and it became a little bit difficult to continue landlording. So turned those over to a company and decided that I liked that so much that I would go buy some land right in the middle of the city and do a one-off development, and built a 16-unit apartment complex from the ground up. And it was a lot of fun. And that's where I started realizing I would leave the emergency department, a very, very busy emergency department out in East Texas. I'd leave at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'd go out there and just think, wow, I'd sit on the tailgate of my pickup going, this is great. I love this. And so it just became something to me that it became a hobby, which as medicine started to change and I was spending an inordinate amount of time in the hospital and a full partner in a practice, it started to pull up my family time, and I was seeing the writing on the wall with healthcare, and at least for me and where I wanted. So I decided to resign my partnership, and we moved to a bigger DMA here in Dallas-Fort Worth area. And really started syndicating then. Didn't know what syndicating was at the time. My issue at the time was I had years of investor database, ex-partners, friends of partners, things like that I knew would be interested in investing because I had proven the concept that I was actually fairly adept at real estate, but I had no idea what a PPM was. And that was when I learned that, the light bulb went off and the whole world opened up. And I'll stop there, because that's about 2014, and I'll let Tim jump in a little bit here, and I'll take it from that first syndication off as soon as Tim, because I'm talking a little too much right now.
So when Tom was looking at that dirt, I went to visit him back in, when was that, 2011?
2011, something like that, yeah.
Was very, very busy as the COO of at the time, was a public company getting ready to sell to a very, very large private equity firm. And Tom took me out there and had to put me on his shoulders to get in his pickup truck, because everybody in East Texas has a pickup truck with giant tires.
That's all they sell in Texas, isn't it?
That's right. Well, when in Rome, man. When in Rome, you're going to get contractors to do it. You
Right.
can't show up in a BMW, dude. Not in East Texas.
Yeah, right. So we went out there and he said, Tim, I'm going to build an apartment complex. And I mean, I looked at him and I said, do you need your head examined? As being an ER doctor and having 4 very young kids and a great wife, I just couldn't understand how he was able to put that on his plate and be able to get down the road. But he did. And there's a lot of stories in between that are really funny, that our parents were the management company. They would come visit. They would come visit me in the summer times and answer the phone. Well, yes, we have a 2-bedroom, and that's leasing for $1,400 a month. Anyway, we digress.
Yep.
So my background is very different from Tom's. I have spent 32 years in entertainment, working in hospitality. First 18 was Six Flags Entertainment, and the last 13 up until 2016 as the COO for Great Wolf Resorts. So what makes our company very unique is, Tom is very, very good at the deal side, looking at numbers, data, thinking about our investors and, what's in their best interest, and really raising money. I spend, all my time kind of on the backside, putting the pieces of the foundation together to build a scalable company. To date, we have about $110 million worth of assets. Tom has raised just over $27 million in about 19 months. So we're really scaling this business. I think, as Tom said earlier, maybe before we started recording, we're uber transparent, and our integrity is everything, and our investors and our team absolutely come first, and it's part of our culture and deeply rooted in our DNA.
Wow. So you all really hit the ground running, already 110 million in assets. When did you all start this process again, the syndication business?
Well, that goes back to, so Tim and I in late 2015, was it 2016? So we're not even 2 years in as far as that. But when I left my former practice and I moved here and I took a directorship, and I actually still run a physician group for an 8-facility contract. So I manage the contract of about 80 doctors at 8 different hospitals. So in 2014, once I, discovered what this PPM was and things like that, I bought my first deal was in Arlington, in Texas. And I want to say it was 305 doors, paid $12.4 million, raised about just over.
That deal again.
What's that?
What we wouldn't do to have that deal again.
Oh God. Yeah. It was timing, right? I mean, timing's half the deal in this business. So paid $12.4 million, raised a little over $3 million. 2 years and 7 days later, we sold it for just under $21 million.
Wow.
So we had brought about $9.6 million to the bottom line, not only by driving NOI, but also we, got the benefit of some cap rate compression over the last couple of years. And so, yeah, deals like that don't exist anymore, at least that I've tried to find. So that really, what happened is that really created a larger legitimacy for me and the investors that we use going forward. So, that was 2017. We sold. Tim and I had already, undergone some transformation in Napali Capital after he had left his career. And started hitting everything really hard and running. And we did our first deal in 2016, early 2016, like January. And so it's been a lot of fun. Things are tight, as out there right now, and it's a lot more difficult with cap rates falling and interest rates going up, and people, a lot of people getting into the real estate business.
So working full time, as a physician and all these things going on. I mean, obviously, you didn't have tons of spare time. I think you talked about how it was taking time away from family and those types of things. But and then you go into the real estate. What helped you to manage that or give you confidence that you could make that happen?
Well, I guess a lot of Tim likes to say that I like a little bit of fear in my life. What I would say to that is actually leaving that practice, I actually had more time on my hands to practice then in a different area because of the style and the way in which I was practicing, the hours I was doing, and a lot of emotional fatigue from trauma and just a very difficult, very high acuity, high volume practice. So I have a super understanding wife. I do a lot of I guess I'm good at multitasking for the most part during that time, not so much anymore. But I tend to like a little bit of stress in my life, especially when it comes to the professional side. And so I'll stretch and pull things out a little bit and still manage to meet a lot of family obligations. I mean, I have more time now than I ever have in 44 years. I'm finally to a place in my life that I'm kind of at peace with the volume I work, how I work, compensation, and the whole thing. So. And Tim's smiling. So go ahead, Tim. I know you got something to say about that.
No. I mean, I think Tom's right. I mean, the one thing that I say frequently is most people run away from fear. Tom runs towards it. And I think that's a really strong attribute, and really also deeply rooted in our DNA. That's how we learn, is, run towards things that you tend to run, or most people tend to run away from.
Right.
I like that a lot. I mean, running towards fear. If we're not stressed a little bit, we're really not growing, are we? We're not learning.
That's exactly right. You're just being complacent, right? I mean, it's more about a mind shift, and you can go to a lot of people doing this. I'm sure there's that Robert Kiyosaki, rich dad, poor dad mentality. I think it was just something that I realized that I wasn't the typical sheep, and I wanted to do things different. And once I proved that concept to me, or to myself, and Tim can say this too, is it took a while. It opened up this world of seeing how the legitimate world that you believe around you isn't necessarily the case. I mean, it is what you make it. And listening to all the fodder is never a good thing. And when you decide to, as long as the numbers look good and you have a reasonable expectation, I think it's okay. If you're expecting to go be a billionaire and you're going to go do this, you can get dangerous, right? I mean, you have to live and die by your underwriting, and you have to look globally. You can't microanalyze something, but at the same time, you've got to have a little bit of trust in yourself.
So tell us about something you all are working on or excited about now, or a property you've recently done.
Yeah, so we're actually really excited right now.
Really?
So we've done about 10 multifamily deals, in 18 months, and it's gotten really difficult. We analyze typically several hundred, 220 deals a year, to usually hit about 2%, right around in there, is about our conversion rate. It's become, the financing has become difficult, and so we've actually pivoted a little bit. And we're looking into more hospitality type ventures. Given Tim's background and all his contacts, and having been the chief operations officer of a hotel company, we've gone down a different direction, creating a hospitality company, and looking at limited and select service hotels. The nice thing about that for us is they can be syndicated still, but there's a huge barrier to operations, right? I mean, you have to not only have a resume in real estate, but you also have to have an operations resume. So it's a little bit more difficult to have that barrier to try to get to, the Hilton, the Marriott, the Hyatt. They have to approve you before you can buy these things. And so it's been a lot of fun going down that road. Cap rates are actually really good. We're talking 8 to 11, somewhere around in there. And with the spreads we have, the leverage is a little bit lower, but there's products out there that you can get the spread and the debt that you need to make it work. And so we're pretty excited about it. We've just started going down the last month or so, after underwriting another 100 or so multifamily deals, that it's getting really tough, and sticking to the numbers is an absolute. And when the numbers don't work, you got to look elsewhere, and you just got to wait for the blood to be in the streets again. And it's coming.
What are some differences in the numbers, when you're looking at hotels versus multifamily residential?
That's probably a good thing for Tim to answer, because on the pro forma side, he's a master. I mean, I can tell you about the debt structure, and where the cap rates are, of course, but he's probably one to tell you about the ADRs and things like that and what that means.
Yeah, I mean, the margins are very, very robust in certain categories or service of hotels. So when we think about Napali Hospitality Group, we're going to be acquiring limited and select service hotels. So when you think about what those are, right? Fairfield Inn, Hampton Inn, Hilton Garden Inn, Hyatt Place, those major brands that are uber efficient when you think about labor. And their points program is really, really important. Marriott Rewards, Hilton, Hyatt, the person who's on the road traveling, depends on those points to be able to take his or her vacation for their family, go to Disney or overseas. So it's really important for us to align with one of those three flags in a market and sub-market that has real demand drivers. So we're scrubbing Texas pretty hard, looking for those right assets. The margins are uber efficient. As Tom likes to say, when you think about Hyatt Place, they've done a really good job with that model, where the front desk attendant is also the person that cooks your food and will pour your drink for you, so that the bar and the restaurant are right there. But the food is much like Starbucks, where it's prepared and all they're doing is warming up, an artisan sandwich, putting it, as Tom says, on a
square plate and put a nice fork on there, and voila.
And charges you $13 for it.
Right. Yep.
So those are the types of hotels we're looking for.
Nice. So what kind of response from investors going from, multifamily residential to hotels? Is it, what kind of response have you received?
Going down the road, when you look at a couple of years ago and the amount of money that we've raised, I haven't formally gone out there. The nice part is the cash on cash is actually pretty significant. So our investors tend not to be straight equity investors, knowing that, it's a 5-year or 3-year and out. It's more of a cash flow play. So empirically, I don't think there's going to be an issue. We've got several capital groups that have approached us because of the tendency that everybody thinks and is concerned about what the direction multifamily is going to be in 1, 2, 3 years. We don't really know. What I do know is, cap rates going down and interest rates going up. That's not sustainable at some point, and we're either going to get to a hold period with a lot of sellers, or people are not going to be able to make their performance anymore. So I don't think we're going to have any pushback whatsoever on it. And I model it very, very similar to how we do our multifamily deals, with the exception of it's just a longer hold period. But to really offset that longer hold period, you've got a higher cash on cash, 9, 10 prefs, things like that. So it's pretty sustainable.
Most investors are going to be okay with that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've got about 650 investors in our database that are 95% physicians, and physicians typically aren't people that are, hungry for cash flow right away. It really depends on their situation. And when you look at a 9-pref tax advantaged, after depreciation, you probably have a return of 11, 12% just on your cash component yearly. So, that doesn't even, you talk to about an IRR catch up at the end of the sale, or however we're going to structure it. It's still a 2x after 5 to 7 years plus.
Tell me, I've met numerous physicians who have done similar to what you've done, come into the syndication business and speak to us who aren't a physician or aren't in that field, obviously, but what's the best way for us to meet high net worth individuals like that and really show them the benefits of the syndication business and how we can help them? I mean,
Sure.
You being on that side and working with, with those people, give us some tips.
It's tough. I mean, if anybody else has tips, I'd love to hear them too. I mean, I've got a heck of a time sometimes trying to break through that thought process of theirs. I wrote a book called The Passive Income Physician right there.
Nice.
And that helped because that was really about my awakening from looking at things mainstream to a more internal, self-reliant kind of a financial situation. It's very, very difficult because they tend to, and this isn't a knock against physicians myself, they tend to think that they're the smartest person in the room, which granted, it, may be or maybe not be true, but the biggest thing is you're trained to be a very independent thinker. You're supposed to analyze data, make a decision off a data set without any of the noise, whether that's drug companies, any number of things, and without input. And I think that really hurts us from a financial sense because it really doesn't make any sense in that we're trained to analyze all this data, yet 9 times out of 10, they just go to a financial advisor and they're going to pay them 2% on their portfolio and not have any input whatsoever and really not understand the drivers of that. So I would say it's more about networking and it's about track record. There's physician conferences all the time. I mean, there's all sorts of websites out there. I think the last time since I've been doing this over the last, more seriously, the last 4 or 5 years, there has been a slew of physician bloggers and, and podcast folks that are doing this. And I don't know how successful they are, but I know that as we see healthcare become more and more difficult and more burnout as that increases, as salaries stay flat and the red tape increases, then you're going to see more alternative physicians seeking that. So happy to help anybody, point them in the right direction, certainly, but they're a difficult bunch. They're a difficult nut to crack for sure.
Thank you. Tim, tell us a little bit about how you all work together on the backside of the company. What does that look like? I know you're more in operations. Is that right? Maybe you can give us some pointers on, how to have better processes in our business that you all have developed.
Yeah, and that's the key. I mean, it's continuous improvement, productivity, right? And one of the things that we emphasize is mistakes are okay to be made. Just don't make the same one twice and learn from it. I've worked for organizations over my career, or leaders, that you get paralyzed to make a decision for fear of a mistake because of retribution. And I learned, a long, long time ago, to encourage people to make a decision or make a mistake, because a lot of healthy things come out of it. So we've spent the latter part of 2 years really putting the building blocks in place and focusing on those building blocks and what that thread of consistency is through our organization. And we make mistakes. There's little things that happen on a weekly basis. It's what can we learn from, and how can we tighten up those policies and procedures? But it all starts with your core values and your vision. And we talk a lot about our core values. And we've had a couple partners over the last 3 years, Tom and I have worked with, that share different core values and how they think about not only our partners, but our employees and team. And what we found out is that, those partnerships are going to fracture eventually, because at the end of the day, values are really important. And Tom and I definitely are in alignment on those. So,
Right. I would say, to dovetail on that, real estate and syndications are inherently full of people that JV a lot. And I would say my biggest piece of advice would be, for anybody listening, be really, really careful. You want to excel. You want to go in this linear fashion, and sometimes it's really important to step back and know who you're partnering with, not just for money. Because many mentors have told me, having a great deal and a bad partner, you'd rather have a poor deal and a good partner, and it really holds true. It doesn't matter how great the deal is, how much money you're going to make. If you're in with a bad partnership, it eats at your soul, and it's just not a good idea. So just be very, very, very pensive about who you go into business with.
My next question would be, what's the top reason most syndicators fail? Maybe that's one of them, but anything else to elaborate on?
Yeah. Bad underwriting. I
Really?
think that's the first thing, is not sticking to the numbers. You can't make you can't make Dallas numbers look great in Tulsa, right? It's impossible. So you got to be very, very careful about who, where, what, and always stick by the numbers. They don't lie. That's the key. I think that's the biggest thing. I think that I've seen people really fail, is they overestimate.
Yeah, and I would say number 2 is failure of communication. As a syndicator, we have an enormous responsibility to our investors to over communicate. I mean, there's nothing more personal to people than giving you $50, $75, $100,000 and then going silent. So we tend to over communicate.
Yeah. For example, we sent out, when Hurricane Florence was hitting, 5 days before it hit the coast, we started sending out, constant contacts, emails, weather updates, private property updates, when the storm hit. So we were constantly giving a daily update where it was, if we were seeing any damage, what we were doing to assess how we were taking care of it. And then once everything passed, we got the all clear, then we sent out one final email saying, hey, here's what's going on. So just, we noticed that they really appreciate that, and they want to know what's going on and how that affects their investments.
Nice. Any other ways, before we have to go, any other ways you all have recently improved your business that we could all work on?
Oof, man, what haven't we done? We're constantly changing and pivoting to and honing what does well. I'm trying to think of the one thing.
It's as I said earlier, it's continuous improvement in productivity, and never relax, never stop looking to improve. I think we're different because of how we communicate with our investors and the personal relationship that we have with them. We tend to celebrate with our investors. We certainly communicate things that didn't go well. We have nothing to hide from.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd say that. It's being transparent.
Yeah.
Tom, Tim, you all have been some great guests. I really appreciate the value you all have added to the listeners. Will you tell them how they can get a hold of you and learn more about your business?
Sure. You can visit us on napalicap.com, which is napalicap.com. My email address is Thomas, THOMAS, at napalicap.com. Tim's is Tim, TIM, at napalicap.com. That's pretty much it. We've had a great time today. I really appreciate your time and inviting us on the show.
Yeah. And how about your book? How do we learn more about your book?
Yeah, if you reach out to me, I'm happy to drop a copy in the mail. If somebody wants to email me, I can get a copy out. I've got, as you can see behind me, probably the camera. I've got a couple sitting there. It's on Amazon, but for the most part, for people that reach out, I eat, live, and breathe real estate. I still do practice medicine in some capacity, but this was a hobby that became a passion that eventually really became my salvation for my family and myself. So happy to talk to anybody at any time. It'd be great.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate the listeners listening today, and we will talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.